They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video, and I hope everyone is having a great day. I'm certainly having a great day myself. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell. Also consider joining the channel today for just $1 a month. Again, these are all great ways to support the content, but enough of the promotional stuff. Let us get into it because it appears that things have gotten even worse for the Democrat Party. Yeah, that's right. By some miracle, despite things looking already pretty bad for them, things have gotten even worse for the Democrat Party. Look at this. We have brand new early voting numbers out of Pennsylvania. And for the first time ever, at least post-COVID, Donald Trump and the Republican Party just outvoted Democrats in Pennsylvania. That is not a misquote, that's not a typo. Republicans returned 33,000 votes yesterday. Democrats didn't even crack 32,000 votes. This is the first time, possibly ever, Republicans outvoted Democrats in early voting in Pennsylvania. This is an utter disaster for the Democrat Party. And you look by percent, and right now, it's 33% Republican in the early vote in Pennsylvania. Back in 2020, it was barely 23% Republican. Democrats went from 65% to not even 57% of the early vote. That's an 18-point shift in early voting in just 4 years. Compared to 2022, it's even worse. Yeah, so the early voting in Pennsylvania, by some miracle, got even worse. Despite it being already pretty bad for Dems because already they were doing like 10 points worse than 2020, now, by some miracle, it's getting even worse. Because now Republicans, they're just outvoting Democrats. They're outvoting Democrats in early voting. This doesn't happen. And we were told by Democrats that, oh, we were going to see a magical surge for the Democrat Party in Pennsylvania. Really? Because right now, I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing a Republican surge. Now, this doesn't mean the Republicans will win the early vote in Pennsylvania. That's not what I'm saying at all. But Republicans at the last second are starting to outvote Democrats in early voting. Now, this could be a fluke. I get that. Maybe this is just one really good day of early voting for Republicans. I'm not denying that. But there's two big problems with that theory. For starters, even if this was just one day, like, okay, this was just one really good day for Republicans, but they're not going to keep gaining. The problem is, well, that's still not good for Dems. Democrats cannot afford to have days like this at all, especially this late in the cycle. If this was in the middle of September or early October, that's one thing. Like, okay, they had one bad day of early voting in early October. But we are in late October, less than a week away from Election Day. And now Republicans, they're actually outvoting Democrats. And the second problem for Democrats is, even if they regain the early vote advantage each day, like they gain a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, it's not enough. They needed a huge lead in early voting, and right now it's 380,000 votes, which on paper seems like a big deal, but compared to 2020 or even 2022, that's nothing. Back in 2022, it was like 550,000 votes or whatever. Now Democrats lead by 380,000 votes. Even if they gained like 5,000 each day, they would barely crack 400,000 votes, and that's it. And there's a good chance they may not even crack 400,000. They needed at least like 600,000 votes for this firewall to be in a good situation. But right now, they don't even have 400,000. And now there's some days like this, they're just losing their lead. So even if Democrats, they retake the early voting lead and they gain a couple thousand each day, it's not enough. And they could not afford a day like this in late October. Those are the two big problems. And you look at other states, it gets even worse for Democrats. Look at North Carolina. Republicans right now are outvoting Democrats by roughly 42,000 votes, which compared to 2020 and 2022, that's a big shift. Back then, Democrats were up by a lot. But that's not even the biggest story. Democrats in North Carolina are getting outvoted by independents. That is not a misquote. You did not mishear me. Democrats in North Carolina are getting outvoted by independents, not just Republicans, but independents. Yeah. Despite having the largest share of the vote in North Carolina, they're getting outvoted by everyone else. This is an utter disaster because, well, yes, these could be Democrat-leaning independents. I get that. Do you really think every single independent in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, do you really think they're all partisan Dems? Really? They're not. You, as a Republican, you would much rather have 33% independent than 33% Democrat. Because independents, at least some of them at the bare minimum, will break for you. That's the problem. It's not just North Carolina. It's not just Pennsylvania. Nevada is still getting worse for Democrats. Despite Clark County having a couple thousand votes here and there for Dems, Republicans still lead the early vote by 40,000 votes. This didn't happen back in 2020, didn't happen in 2022. It just keeps going on and on. Arizona, same thing. Georgia, same thing. Wisconsin, Michigan. All the swing states right now looks like a complete disaster for the Democrat Party. There's not a single swing state you could argue that actually looks good for Democrats. And I know early voting isn't everything, but even the polls, I mean, come on. How can you look at the RCP average right now and say to yourself, you know, this actually looks pretty good for Harris? No, it doesn't. Trump plus 0.4, despite some clear outliers from Morning Compost, you know, from USA Today, despite having some shit polls like that, it's still a Trump lead on the RCP average. Compare that to 2016 or 2020, and Biden was up by 8 points, Clinton was up by 4. Right now, Trump's leading. And you look at the individual polls, and it's actually the majority, or I should say the plurality of them, are showing a Trump plus 2 victory. Trump plus 3. While you have a couple garbage polls like Morning Compost showing Harris plus 3. Which, by the way, compared to their prior poll, is actually an improvement for Trump. Their prior poll was Harris plus 4. Now it's Harris plus 3. Even Morning Compost is showing a trend towards Trump. So it's not just the early voting, but even the polls, and you can look at any state, they're all showing the same trend. Trump is going up, Harris is going down, and yes, there's some garbage polls out there that have Harris up by some ridiculous margin, but you look at the individual polls, and it becomes apparent that the consensus is actually a Trump win everywhere. Even the popular vote, which I'm 50-50 about, but if Trump wins a popular vote, do you think he's going to lose? I highly doubt it. And even if he loses a popular vote by like a point or two, he still wins through the Electoral College. So either way, Trump is in a very good position early voting wise. Even the polls are showing Trump is probably going to win. And that's assuming there's no polling miss. We don't even have to apply a polling miss for Trump to win. In fact, it's the opposite. For Harris to win right now, you need a polling miss in favor of her, not in favor of Trump, which has not happened in the Trump era. Is it possible that the polls understate Trump, or Harris, I should say, and overstate Trump? I guess. But the early voting numbers look so bad for Democrats that I'm starting to really believe that maybe some of these Trump plus 2s, maybe they're correct. But maybe they're actually right about Trump winning the popular vote by like 2 to 3 points. Which is not my final prediction, but the more you look at it, makes you really wonder. But fine, you could argue that this is just a fluke. That maybe there's enough time for Harris to pull off a magical comeback and she could gain momentum. Which is crazy to say because, guess what? Next week is election day. We only have 1 week of this campaign left, and you need not only a big shift in early voting, but even the polls to barely, and I mean barely, win. You need like a 20-point shift. That's how bad it is for Democrats in early voting in the polls to barely squeak by. But before yesterday, Democrats were actually convincing themselves they were going to pull off a magical comeback. Which, again, if this was a month away from Election Day, fine. That's entirely possible. But now, we are 1 week away from Election Day. It's very unlikely, but I guess it's possible because Democrats, they actually believe that, oh, Puerto Rico joke is going to save Harris. You know, the rally in Washington, D.C. yesterday is going to save her and all that crap, which I guess is possible, but I would argue all that stuff they were banking on for the final week of the campaign, it was flushed down the toilet. Because President Biden, of all people, made what could very well be the biggest gaffe of this entire cycle. And I know there's been a lot of gaffes from Biden this year. Even Kamala Harris, she made some real bad ones. But of all of them, of all the gaffes that have happened this year, this one, I would argue, is the biggest gaffe. Because we are not even a week away from Election Day. And at this point, the majority of people have heard about this by now. For those that don't know, Joe Biden, during, I believe, a fundraiser or some kind of outreach thing, I don't know for sure, but he said this about Trump supporters. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. Who do you think he was referring to here? He was clearly referring to Trump supporters. And I know Democrats, they're going to cope and say, well, actually, he was referring to the single comedian that made fun of Puerto Rico or something like that. But when you hear what he actually said, it's clear. He was saying half the country is garbage because they support Trump, they support MAGA, whatever reason. It doesn't matter what he actually meant. The majority of people that watch this clip, they realized he was clearly talking about Trump supporters. He was not referring to a single comedian. No, he wasn't. That's bullshit. Why would he say his supporters? Who was he referring to at that point? The supporters of the comedian or of Trump? Which one makes the most sense? He was obviously referring to, or he might have misspoke here, but he was referring to Trump supporters here. At least that's his own words. Maybe he meant to say something else, but it doesn't matter. That's what he said here. He said the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. And who do you think he meant by his supporters? People that support Donald Trump. And I would argue it's already causing a lot of backlash, enough so where Josh Shapiro, the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, who, by the way, should have been the vice presidential pick, he went on CNN, not even like 5 minutes after this came out. He distanced himself from Harris and Biden. And he says Trump supporters are not garbage. If you disagree with me, you're not garbage because of it. That's what he said on CNN. Other Democrats, they said the same thing. Even Walz, he was trying to defend this, saying, "Oh no, we're actually pushing for unity. Actually, we're not pushing for divisiveness." Yeah, sure, buddy, sure. But point is, even Democrats like Josh Shapiro, who should have been the vice president, he should have been the nominee for vice president, and more than likely in 2028 will run for president. He's already saying, this was a big mistake by Biden. I disagree with him. I respect anyone with different opinions. Even though I disagree with them, I respect them for it. That's what he said. I mean, this is not good for Democrats if Josh Shapiro is running the CNN not even 5 minutes after the fact saying this. It tells you that Democrats like Josh Shapiro and others, ones that actually have a brain, they're starting to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not what Democrats needed at the last second. It was already bad enough, but any chance of some kind of comeback, it might have just died. Because this is a basket of deplorables moment from Biden. He insults half the country, and anyone that's even considering backing Trump. Like, they might be leaning towards Harris, but they may also vote for Trump. They don't know yet. Biden insulted anyone that's even remotely considering supporting Trump here. This could backfire badly. Now, will it? We just got to see what happens, but I really believe the Harris campaign, they believe that this is a big mistake because they're already trying to distance themselves away from the statement, and Democrats like Shapiro, they're running the CNN and saying, no, I disagree with what Harris or Biden said here. This was a mistake, all that crap. Not what Democrats needed at the last second. When they were trying to pull off a huge miracle, Biden put out one of the dumbest statements he could have put out at the last second. And funny enough, it was right when Harris was speaking. I mean, think about it. In what should have been Harris's biggest speech ever, it was overshadowed by what Biden said. And it spread like wildfire. No one's talking about what Harris said last night. No one cares. Everyone is talking about what Biden said about Trump supporters. I mean, just think about it. Right when she was speaking, like 5 minutes after the fact, she started to speak, that's when the clip was released. And it spread like wildfire. That's what everyone was talking about. No one was talking about the Harris speech. like maybe for 5 minutes, but after this was released, that's when everyone just ignored what she was saying and heard about what Biden said and began talking about that. I mean, that is brutal for Harris. That's not what she wanted, but it's what happened. It's what happened because of Biden's stupid statement. We will see if this has any real impact, but I really believe that this overshadows anything that happened at the Madison Square Garden rally, anything Trump says, because now you have the President of the United States saying this about half the country. We'll see what the impact of it is, but I can't see how it's good for Harris, but maybe some miracle happens and Harris actually gains from this, but I find it so unlikely that we'll see, I guess. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.